My name is Jared Thang. I will be hosting this webinar. And by way of quick introduction, I've been with FairCom for over 2 years, and I lead new sales for FairCom. Joining me is our Edge lead, Walter Johnson, and I'll share a full bio with him shortly. You may have seen us recently at trade shows such as Automate in Chicago, IoT Solutions World Congress in Barcelona, IMTS in Chicago, or MD&M in Anaheim. I want to share a high-level overview of our software platform and where we fit in the ecosystem. We understand that many companies are at different stages in their journey and of getting data out of their machines, and so we want to help. And quite frankly, we can help wherever you are at in your organization. So first off, what we're able to do is we connect to sensors and devices on a manufacturing floor using protocols such as Modbus, OPC UA, Siemens, Allen Bradley, MTConnect, and MQTT. We utilize tags to determine what data to pull and how often to pull that data. Once we get the data, we have a database built into the solution where we store it, which means that you'll never lose data. We also have built in a powerful MQTT broker, and we've architected it so that you would never lose an MQTT message, and the delivery of those messages will be in order for real-time purposes. Once we've stored the data, we're able to transform or enrich the data if needed, as we have a transform engine built into the solution. And for example, an easy transformation is, converting or changing the temperature from Fahrenheit to Celsius or Celsius to Fahrenheit, working with different pressures and a variety of other transforms, simple and complex in nature. Once we've transformed that data into a usable format, such as JSON, SQL, or MQTT, we're able to deliver that to the rest of the business so that they can make business decisions. I'm going to share just a few use cases that we run into consistently that our platform is really good at helping with. There's a lot of other use cases that we won't have time to discuss, such as unified namespace and others. But the first one that I do want to cover is part traceability. FairCom Edge can scale to thousands of data capture points, giving you data on part IDs, timestamps, location, status, and any other parameters you need. Its multi-model architecture lets you query data through your preferred API to quickly and easily trace specific part IDs. A second use case I want to talk about is automation and control. With FairCom Edge, you can collect massive amounts of data by scaling our software to thousands of sensors and machines. You can configure the Edge's MQTT broker to push data to analytics and enterprise applications when needed. You can query the data in real time using both IT and OT APIs. And then the third use case I want to describe real briefly is predictive maintenance. You can prevent equipment failures with real-time analytics. FairCom Edge automatically collects data from your machines and sensors and sends it to subscribing analytics apps. Edge also transforms and standardizes the data, providing higher quality information for predictive insights. But as we look at overall what FairCom Edge can do, we are the glue of glues or the integrator of integrators. And we sit in the middle with the ability to integrate data into other systems in the business, getting rid of data silos. And two last important considerations before I introduce Walter. We've architected and built to be on-prem, so you can drive real-time insights and computing at the edge. This minimizes latency and security concerns with the cloud, and we can definitely get your your data to the cloud, but we save you costs by only sending the information and data that you want sent to the cloud. So without further ado, let me introduce Walter Johnson. He's a senior engineer with FairCom, and before joining, he was a FairCom customer for 24 years. He joined FairCom because of his passion for databases and programming. When he's not building databases to track his personal life, he enjoys reading programming in C, C++, and Python. He has a BS in computer science and 30 plus years in database technology. Walter is going to show some of the capabilities of FairCom Edge, and I will turn the time over to him now. So, Walter?
All right. So, yeah, like we talked about, we're going to show the Edge product talking to a Allen Bradley device over Ethernet IP. Going to show what it takes to configure that, what that looks like. Going to show two different ways to configure it, and then we're going to play around with the data song. So this is the Edge product. I've got it here running on Windows. I've got it configured right now to come up like a regular app, show its UI, but it can also just be installed as a service, so it's just there running on whatever machine you have available. Now, with our Edge product comes several web-based utilities. And so I'm going to switch over to a web browser. It's not telling you about that now. Okay. Yeah, so we have all these web-based utilities that come with it. You just get to them in a web browser. And so we're going to, in today's demo, we're going to be using these top three. We'll start in Data Explorer. So we have a nice suite of JSON-based APIs that we can use for a lot of different things, including configure the product. So for this demo, I have a series of API requests all queued up here. As you can see, they're all just JSON objects. So it's just you craft a JSON object that controls what you want, or that describes what you want us to do, send that object to the Edge product, and then, it gives you a response back in JSON, telling you what happened. So if anything that can be sent to us over MQTT, we are going to ingest that with zero config automatically. If something can't send MQTT, like a PLC, some can, some can't. Maybe you don't want to add that code on there to get it to do that. And that the PLC is busy. We want it to just do its job. So it'd be nice if we didn't have to worry about that. But we want the data over MQTT, for instance. So we have a concept called inputs. So we can create an input, which basically just says, hey, here's this device, go out and find it and actively pull the data from it. So this is create input command for this object. There's two ways to do this. I'm going to show you this API way, and then I'll show you a little less technical of a way to do this same thing. But in a nutshell, we're just telling our product to create an input. Here's where my device is. A timeout, some information about what kind it is, and then the next important stuff to know is what data do I want to pull from this device. So this device I'm talking to, I'm going to pull like 5 tags, something like that. There's a serial number that I'm pulling, a speed, like a spindle speed. And then I have some text tags because we have the ability to pull string tags also. So I have a single string tag here and then an array of string tags here. Now all of this part, oh boy, that's not what I want. Okay, we'll do it the hard way. This part of it is all Allen Bradley, Ethernet IP specific. This is just the information I need to give the device so that to identify, one particular piece of information. And then there's this property path that we've added onto there. So you're going to specify this much information for each tag you want to pull. Now, what this property path allows us to do, it's a JSON property and an optional JSON path. What this allows us to do is with every time we pull data from this particular PLC, we're going to build continuously and automatically turn those data pulls into JSON objects. So that's our first transform, is we just get the raw Ethernet IP data and we turn it into a nice JSON object. Okay, so we'll get that far and then we'll look at that. Also, one other thing is in here, we're gonna decide where we want stored. So we're gonna store it in a table called ABT inside of our Edge product. So let's run this command and then we'll see what happens. So I'll get my response back down here. Yeah, error code 0, error message 0. That means that the command ran without any issues. So great. That's exactly what I wanted. So now at this point, our Edge product is actively contacting this PLC, talking to it in its native, its own protocol. So we're not disturbing it. We didn't have to do anything to the PLC, and we're pulling the specified tags of information. Now let's look at that, just the data coming in. Here's that ABT table that I told her to store it in. So we can go look at the records. Looks like we've gotten 3 reads while we were talking. We'll just pick one, and then let's look at the source payload field. And look, there's the JSON object I wanted it to create. Now, JSON is valuable because it is, it's interoperable. It's something that lots of different software can understand. So this is really useful in your Industry 4.0 kind of UNS sort of approaches, where you're trying to get away from every little device has to be programmed to talk one to many to all the other things that consume the data. Wouldn't it be great if we just had one place or all the devices just send their data to this one place? We get it into the right format. We get do any cleanup, any validation that we need to do. And then everybody who wants to consume the data can just come there. They know what format to expect. They know what to do with the data. They know how to get it. So this is the sort of thing that we're looking at and helping out with. So first step, we got that serial number, that spindle speed, we got those string tags, we've got all of those. Also a timestamp, we threw the timestamp in there. Everything's got to be timestamped so you can correlate what happened when and where and whatnot. So this is great. We've got our first transform done. So it's available, and so we have it as a JSON object. It'd be nice if other people could get at that same data. And we have an MQTT broker built into our product. So what does it take to get these JSON objects now flowing out over MQTT? Well, it's very simple. I just have to identify the topic that I want it to go out on. So again, I'm going to have this JSON object and I'm going to do a configure topic. And I just have to tell it, this is the topic I want to use. So I'm going to use demo/AB forward. So we're going to issue that command. And great. So now that data, so I have this reading, I didn't really show this, but I told it to pull these data tags every 10 seconds. So every 10 seconds now I go out, I get a fresh set of data, I turn it into a JSON object. Now it's getting published over MQTT. So let's look at that. Our MQTT broker is standards compliant, so you can use any MQTT client that you want. You don't have to use ours, but in case you don't have one, we include this MQ Explorer that allows you to look at what's happening over at MQTT. So I just refreshed it. Our topics went up by 1, and that's that demo/AB forward topic that I just created. So what does the data look like? Let's look at it through MQTT. I can easily subscribe to that topic. There it is, AB forward, subscribe, shows up. And then the next time the data pull happens, I get the message. Now, I can configure our broker so that when people subscribe, do they get old messages or do they not get old messages? Do they only get going forward? That's a configuration thing I can set up. Also, I can rate limit. When you're getting old messages, we're catching you up. I can rate limit that so you don't get swamped. So there it is. There's a continuous stream of those tags that are getting pulled in JSON format. Now, anybody can subscribe to this and just get the live data. So that's great. Let's jump back a little bit. Let me show you the other way to configure an input, because this way is great if you're technical, if you like looking at JSON objects and all that makes sense to you. But if you don't have to do it that way. I click on the right tab. That's always helpful. So we have this Edge Explorer. This is another web-based utility that we're doing, and it's kind of the less technical way to do all this, because we can go to Data Explorer, we can dig into the data, we can use the API, that's kind of the technical way to do it, or the Edge Explorer is the less technical way to do it. So for instance, on the collect side, I can see here's that input that we created. I can just add a new one here, like, oh, I want another Allen Bradley connector. Or I can just look at this one that we have already created. And the nice thing is it's just filling out forms. So I give it a name here. What do I want to call it? It's the AB service. Go next. And then it tells me, I need to tell it what kind of a PLC it is. What's its address? How often do I want to pull the data? Where do I want to put it? So I just have to go through these things. I can control in both ways, in the API way and through this GUI way, I can control how long the data exists. So you can set it to never purge, which means keep the data forever, or you can set it to auto purge and keep the data for 4 weeks. So once there's a fifth week of data, that fifth week will drop off automatically. This is nice if I don't need a lot of historical, or if I only need a little bit of historical and I don't want to have a ton of data pile up that means nothing to me. So this is fully within your control how long the data lasts. The next screen, here's where I specify those tags. So I can just add a row for each tag I want to pull. So this way, this GUI way, you can see this would be nice. The first time I'm talking to a device, I'm just kind of noodling around like, hey, can I get this sorted out? Can I find the device? Can I get the tags I want? Is it this tag or that tag? This is a great way to do that. But if you know exactly what you're doing, or if you need to like configure 10 of these, then you're not going to want to do it through this UI. You can, but it's going to be a little fiddly. And, if you have let's say you have 28 or 128 tags you want to pull, it'd be a little bit tedious to peck each one of those in here, but you could do it that way, which is why we also provide the API way. So in the API way, then I just have this JSON object, and I can make a base JSON object, and then I can have a script that grabs that and replaces the IP, and it replaces the table name, and it just replaces a few things and then fires that off to us. We get it, we configure it, and we tell you, yeah, it worked. Then you do the next one. So you can see how you can have like a technical scripted approach where you're just standing up everything all at once, or you can have a less technical, hey, let me just, go through there and sort things out. Okay, so our data is, we're gathering the data. We're saving it. It can be encrypted if we need it to be. Everything's got to be secure nowadays. All of these APIs that I'm talking about require authentication. I don't show that really as part of this demo, but they require it, and all that's available. And then we're transforming the data into a nice JSON object now. And then everybody who wants to can just consume that data easily. Now, this is somewhat of a simplistic version. What if I had something more complex? What if I needed to do some data conditioning? What if I have to pull two tags and like add them together with 1 divided by 10? Or what if I have to, what if I want to do some validity checking and then add something that says this data is inbound or this data is out of bound? What if I wanted to add some context? There's all these things that are going to be different. So we have some kind of off the shelf simple transforms ready for you to just grab and use, like the one that I'm about to show you, because I'm actually getting ahead of myself just a little bit. Okay, so I'm going to add another step to this. I'm going to have what I'd like to do is I would like to do a simple transform to just dip into that JSON object, look for a few tags like the serial and the speed, and then pull those out as their own column. So this is like a prepackaged transform that you can use, and it'll just add these two fields to my table. And I've specified here, like, what do I want to call the field, what type it's going to be, and what, and all that, where to get it. So it's going to come from that serial JSON property. So these are nice, easy to use. So I'm going to send that one. Okay, no errors. That's great. So these are reusable. So I have this transform out there now, but it isn't connected to anything. So now I want to connect it to this transform that I already created. So it's that ABT transform that we heard, that input. So this is the input name. I want to connect this transform to the input I've already created. So that's just simple command to do that. And there we go. Now, every time it's gonna go out there, get to the device, pull the tags I specified, create that JSON object that's available or MQTT. But now also it's going to dip into that JSON object, pull a few fields, and turn them into their own column in the table. Why would I want to do that? For reporting. Can you do reporting over JSON? Yeah, you can. Can SQL, for instance, dig into a JSON object? It can. It isn't as elegant as if you just have it in a more traditional tabular format. If you can get the data into a kind of a tabular format, SQL reporting is a dream. It's easy. So that's happening now. Let's look at that a little bit. Let's go back and look at our table, and it'll have to reload because I changed things on it. I'll have to go to the last page. And then let's grab one of these. And look, see, now there's this serial and speed column in my table. I could get it to show over here. I'd have to configure the columns, but those two values, now they're not only available as JSON, they're still there. They're still in the JSON object. The JSON object is always available. It's still out there. So if JSON over MQTT is going to do your thing, then you're done. If you wanted to do some reporting, look, now it's available in a traditional tabular format. So that's nice. But like when I was getting a little bit ahead of myself before, I was talking about, so we have these off the shelf easy transforms, but what if I want to do something really custom? Well, that's no big deal because we have the ability to let you kind of roll your own, create your own transform in case our existing ones aren't quite what you want. So I'm going to create what we call a code package. And this is just a JSON object, but it's got some JavaScript code wrapped up inside of it, all piled up in that one line. It's a little bit hard to read, but we'll look at it in a little bit different format. This allows me, like anything I can describe with JavaScript code, I can then create a transform using that code. Now, like I said, it's a little hard to read this JavaScript code. So let's go to our graphical way of doing it. Get rid of this, go to transforms. And see, now I have a nice editor. So what this transform that I'm adding now would do is it takes that float value that I was getting that had a lot of decimals on it. I happen to know those decimals are not significant. It's, the spindle speed sensor on this really is only good for about 2 decimals. So, in order to not imply more precision than I have, I'm going to just round that to 2 decimals. So that's an example of a transform that I might want to add. So if I wanted to add 2 values together, I could just write some simple JSON code to do that. And that allows me to simply and quickly create my own transform. Now, you're wondering, well, maybe I'm not a JavaScript coder. Well, we're happy to help you with some examples to use to get you started with this sort of thing. Okay, so we talked about getting the data, talked about transforming it, talked about making it available over MQTT. So what else could we talk about? Well, what about things that, what if I want to do something, some custom work? I want to process this data. We have a full suite of, like I talked about, we have this JSON Action API. One of the things it can do is access the data. So it can, with this simple API. Now, let me cover just a little bit of something. This JSON Action API, anything that can send an HTTP post can access this API. You just create a JSON object, you put it in to an HTTP post command, and then you get the answer back as a JSON object. So this is a very flexible. Pretty much every modern language can send an HTTP post. You can do it with curl, using a shell script. You can do it with Python. You can do it with Go. You can do it with, C#. You can do it with whatever. So this API is available through a lot of different things. And so it really opens up the doors. If you want it, you need to do any custom work, don't worry. It's here for you. You can do exactly what you want to do. So I wanted to show some examples of that. So we will show that. So I have this simple JSON object that's just get records by table, and then I specify that table that I told it to store my data in. This is very simple. Here's the auth token. Like I said, I didn't show this, but everything has to authenticate. So I have to supply an auth token to use this API. But you see, this is a very simple object, and that's going to let me to get the data from the table. So I'm going to run that. Let's expand this. And then here's I just get an array of JSON objects back that is my data. Now, if you recall, so we have that source payload field, which is interesting. And we have those two fields that we added, the speed and so there's just a little bit of data here that I'm really interested in. This is kind of busy. There's a lot of info here. Now, the nice thing about JSON is I don't care. I can just ask it, do you have the serial? Do you have the speed? Yes, yes, I have those. So it's not a big problem, but it'd be nicer if I could kind of clean that up, tidy that up a little bit. So because this is a rich API, of course I can do that. I can tell it only return the fields that I ask for. Don't return all those other fields. I can also say, give me a maximum of 30 records, because my previous request was going to give me all the records in the table, which was fine because I created the table at the beginning of this demo. So I knew there weren't a lot of records in it, but there might be a lot of records. So of course I can limit the returned records. I can put a filter on there, like only give me records where the serial number is greater than 5. The nice thing about this filter is it is almost bare metal access speed wise. We've honed this table filtering here so that it happens really quick server side. So inside of our product, we deal with this for you. So let's try that one. Okay, let's look at the results we got from that. Oh, I don't think we actually have any serial numbers greater than 5 because see, my data is empty. Okay, so let me modify this and say it was less than 5. Let's see if we get some data from that one. Yeah, see, all my serial numbers are lower than 5. See, now this is a nice, tidy, like this is exactly what I wanted. So you can see how you can craft using the API and access the data in exactly the way that you want and exactly the amount that you want. Of course, I can also throw in a cursor. So I can say, hey, I need a lot of data, but give it to me in a cursor. And that way I can use that cursor and then I can just say, give me another record from that cursor. Give me another one. Give me another one. Give me another one. And then I'll just slowly march through that big array of data. And then at the end, it'll say no more data. And I'm like, oh, cool, I got it all. So we have a lot of options there available. So this is kind of the NoSQL way of accessing it. And I talked about SQL reporting. So let's look at that next. We have an ANSI standard SQL engine built into our product, and it allows me to issue arbitrary SQL commands. And I have one here just for convenience. Again, in the Data Explorer utility, where we've been looking at the table, we've digging into the data, we've been using the API Explorer to exercise in the API. There's also the SQL Queries tab where I can throw a SQL query. So let's look at this. I'm going to pull the serial and the speed from our ABT table where the serial number is greater than 1. So let's run that. Oh, look, here's my results. So this is kind of nice. We have APIs, several APIs where you send in SQL commands and get the response back. Also, we have ODBC and JDBC. So anything you have, any SQL reporting engine, dashboarding engine, anything that talks SQL, we can just point it right at our product, at our ODBC driver, and get the data. I'll show a little bit more about that as we go. So that was nice. So now I've looked at, we can get the data through an API. We can get the data through SQL. We can get at the data in a NoSQL manner, whatever kind of like we give you all these options so that whatever you're trying to do, there's often an approach that really lends itself well to that thing you're trying to do. So we want you to have all these approaches to use to pick from. So let's switch back here. Now, the other thing that we can do is we can kind of mix things up and we can use the API, that simple JSON-based API that's available for so many different ways and languages and methods. I can also use it to issue a SQL statement. So not only can I use it to just say, hey, let me process rows in this table, but I can also say, here's a SQL statement that describes the data that I want. And I can send that. And again, I get the data, I get the results back, the SQL results back as a JSON array of JSON objects. Super easy to parse out. So Why would I want to do all of this? Let's assume that I'm got a business and I'm producing widgets. The widgets are coming off the end of the assembly line. Everything's good. But what happens when the business unit comes to me and says, we have some questions that we need to answer to, and then I realize, oh, I don't have none of my existing system is prepared to answer those questions. Well, this is where this sort of this edge solution comes in, because it's going to be able to get the data, massage it a little bit, fix any issues with the data, add the context that I need, do whatever it is I need to do to make this data really rich and robust so that I can answer these questions, these new questions from the business unit, so that we can have these insights that we didn't have before. We can then feed, we can use this API to pull a block of data that is a good set of data for training an ML instance. Then we can apply that ML instance. There's all this stuff we can do that we couldn't do before. Reports that some poor guy is having to produce in Excel with a pivot table. Wouldn't it be nice if that guy could get back to his real job and not spend half his day in Excel producing these reports that we want? Well, I can just make a SQL report that's available at the click of a button. And then, oh, we needed another field in there. No problem. Modify the report, add the field, click the button again. There you go. Also, dashboarding is a big thing that people like to do with their data. Because what if I could have like a single pane of glass that just tells me like what's happening right now? What's happening with the widget assembly line? Is everything good? Something wrong? What are my production counts? What's going on? Dashboard is a very powerful thing. Now, because we have all these APIs and because we have all this stuff available and the ODBC, JDBC access, it's pretty easy to produce dashboards based on this data. So I will show you an example. So here is Power BI. It's the desktop edition. It's not the big fancy one that's in the cloud. That's just the desktop one. But I was easily able to just say, hey, Power BI, here's this ODBC connector I've got over here to this Edge product. Why don't you pull the data from that? And this is a year's worth of data from a sensor, an outdoor sensor of just reading temperature, right? So because we're in Utah, we can see that, in July, hey, it gets pretty hot in Utah in July, that was 98 degrees that day. In January, ooh, it's kind of chilly in January, below freezing. And then again at the end of the year, and then, using Power BI, I have the ability to zoom in and zoom out and, do all the things that Power BI does. So all that was available just because I just said, hey, pointed it at our ODBC driver, and it could get all the data it needed. Also, if I wanted to do, different dashboard engines, we support Grafana. We have all these different dashboarding engines that you can utilize. I have another example here of one that I did that's a interactive one. So I have sensors in my office and that also, like I said, outside. So here's an interactive dashboard that allows me to pull, graph data based on some settings. So for instance, I've got this set up to show the last 12 hours worth of data, but there's an interesting dip right here. Let's say I'm more interested in that. So I can pull this back and say, give me the last 3 hours worth of data. And when I let go of this, it's going to issue an API request, this JSON-based API, and it's going to say, give me the data between this timestamp and this timestamp. It's going to get that data back quick as a JSON array. That's super easy to parse so that I could build this graph. And there it is. There's a closer view of that. And this allows me to do, pretty much whatever I need to do. So if it fits nicely into an existing dashboarding solution, cool. If I need to roll my own, covered. If I need to do reporting, covered. So all these things that it allows you to do, if you can get your data, get it into one place, get it in the right format, get it, whatever it is that it needs. There's always something, it's like I have data coming from 6 different machines of 6 different formats. Gosh, if I can get it into one format, if I could get it in one place, then everybody can consume it.
All good, Walter. Thank you for walking us through FairCom Edge. Really, really great job there. We've gotten to the Q&A section. I think we've had a couple pop up. John had also asked Walter, and I don't know if you want to augment anything here. Can we do transforms with several data values and over time to do regression? And our response was, yes, we currently have a leading manufacturer of electronic products using Edge to collect data for regression and analysis. Did you want to add anything or augment that answer for John?
Yeah, anything that let's say you actually did think of something we didn't fit into our transform engine, you could just do that using our API. Get all the data you want, do exactly what you want with it. You can write data back. So, sky's the limit. Read a bunch of data from everywhere, crunch it all down, write it to another table. Yeah, it's all available.
Perfect. Great. And then another question, do we offer white labeling for companies to sell and operate as their own product installed in their equipment? And that's a great question. Ultimately, we have a lot of different options as it pertains to white labeling and, embedded devices. And so, I would encourage you to just let's find a moment of time to walk through those different options, and we can share how that would look and how we might make that available for your organization. The next question, and Walter, I'll have you field this one. Any ML or AI algorithms that can be integrated?
Yeah, so that's a great question. Everybody's interested in that, right? Because it's if you could get some, again, that's a great way to get additional insights on your data that you didn't have before. So we typically stop right where, like we get the data ready, we give you all the tools to get that data perfect. And then that's kind of where we stop. And then we let you do what you're going to do with that data. For instance, we don't have a, we didn't write a dashboarding engine because there's awesome dashboarding engines available. We're not necessarily writing our own ML engine, but because so many people are interested in this, we did pick up a partner and we have some partners available who are experts in ML. And so we have those available. So if you don't have a data scientist who wants to do his own, then we have these partners available we can pull in and hook you up. And so then they do it, they make it pretty simple to where it's almost like that ML is going to be just another transform. So you pull a block of data, you train it, then it's available, and then you can just send a live stream of data to that, get the response back, and include that in your data stream. So
Perfect. Thanks, Walter. And one additional question I'll have you field, if you don't mind. Steve asks, can you send data to cloud instead of locally?
oh, yeah. Thank you for asking that. I typically remember to include that in my demo, but I didn't. We have full ability to feed this data to other sources, to other consumers, including the cloud. So we are typically running on-prem, although we're not limited to that. We can run in a cloud, we can run in a public cloud, private cloud, we can run in a container. We're not concerned about where we're running. Often we will be someplace on or near prem, so that we have good access to the data, get the data in its perfect form, maybe crunch the data down. Like everybody started out and let's send all the data to the cloud, and then they got their cloud bill, and they're like, let's not send all the data to the cloud. But some of the data's got to go to the cloud often. So let's get to just the right amount of data. Let's get it crunched down. Let's get it aggregated if necessary, and then forward it onto the cloud. And we have several ways to do that. The simplest is just we can forward any of our data MQTT topics to an external broker. Often these cloud products have a broker running in the cloud, so we just forward the data to that broker. There are other ways to do it to feed other systems as well. Great question.
Having said that, here's a QR scan. You can book a time with us right here. Just put your phone up and scan that, and we can get a time set. We've shown you kind of a very generic, hey, how this would work. We can actually share a tailored demo for your organization based upon what protocols you're looking at using, what you're trying to do with that data. And so we look forward to that opportunity. And in closing, thank you for joining us as we discussed making your machines talk with FairCom Edge. Have a great rest of your day, and feel free to interact with us and get any additional questions over to us, and we can get those answered. Thanks again for your time today.